In the rice fields of South Carolina's humid coast, where snakes slithered through the dikes and mosquitoes rose in clouds thick enough to choke a body, there lived a woman whispered about more than any overseer, preacher, or master. Her name was Liza, a slave woman whose stare cut sharper than any cane knife. Men said she was cursed. Women said she was chosen. Children said she could move without sound, like a shadow shaped into flesh. But the only truth that mattered was this: 6 men once tried to claim her body as their own, and by sunrise, all 6 lay screaming in the dirt, their leg tendons sliced clean through as if by a surgeon's hand. And that was only the beginning. The night they came for her was thick and wet. The air so heavy, Liza felt it pressing against her skin like a warning. She stood alone outside the slave cabins, washing a wooden bowl in the muddy basin, her eyes drifting to the tree line where the moon barely touched the pines. She felt them before she heard them, the shift in the wind, the crunch of weight on dried leaves, the way the insects suddenly fell silent. Liza's fingers tightened around the bowl until it creaked. "Come out, girl," a voice slurred from the darkness. Another snickered. "Ain't no need to hide. We know you out here." She did not move. The first man stumbled into view, a drunk overseer named Trask. His shirt was half-buttoned, his belt hanging loose, his breath thick with whiskey. Behind him came 2 field hands the master paid in liquor, then 3 more men Liza did not recognize. 6 in all. She set the bowl down slowly, deliberately. "Master wants you up at the shed," Trask said, words rolling together like beeswax. "Says you gonna be useful tonight." The other men laughed. Liza didn't blink. "The master ain't here." Trask grinned, revealing 2 missing teeth. "Don't need him. We own you, same as he do." Her jaw tightened, but she spoke coolly. "You own nothing." A nearby cabin door cracked open, someone inside peeking out. Liza raised one hand without turning, silencing them. Whoever it was shut the door again instantly. Trask took a step toward her. "Don't play proud, girl. We bein' nice askin'. Could drag you by your hair instead." The men behind him murmured in agreement. Liza stared at the ground for a moment, as if thinking. Then she lifted her head and smiled. It was slow, controlled. A smile that did not reach her eyes. "Is that what you want?" she asked softly. It made the men pause, exchanging confused glances. That wasn't how terrified women sounded. It wasn't how cornered women sounded. It wasn't how broken women sounded. But Liza was none of those things. Trask stepped closer and grabbed her wrist. She moved faster than a striking snake. Her hand flashed to the hidden sliver of steel she kept tied to her thigh, a fragment of a scythe she'd sharpened against riverstone until it was thin as a razor. She twisted, slicing upward with a motion so small it looked like nothing. Trask's scream tore through the night as he collapsed, hands flying to his knee. The tendon had snapped like a rope. The other men froze for a heartbeat, stunned at how quickly a giant could fall. Liza didn't give them time to recover. Another lunge, a slash, another man dropped, his legs folded under him like wet cloth. A third rushed her clumsily, arms outstretched, but she ducked, pivoted, and dragged the blade across the back of his ankle. He collapsed face first, howling into the dirt. "Stop her!" one shouted, but his voice shook. 2 left. She could hear their breathing, fast and uneven. She moved toward them, her bare feet light on the soil. She seemed to float more than step, her body calm, her eyes bright in the moon's faint glow. The 4th tried to run. He didn't make it far. Her arm swung low, the blade catching his heel like a whisper of wind. He went down screaming, unable to crawl, his fingers clawing at the earth. The 5th came at her with a branch he'd grabbed from the ground, swinging wildly. She sidestepped, caught his wrist, and with one sharp downward cut, ended his ability to stand. 5 men on the ground now, 5 cries cutting through the night. The last man stood trembling, unable to speak, unable to breathe, staring at her as if she weren't human at all. "Please," he whispered. "Please, don't." Liza stepped so close he could smell the peppermint leaves she crushed daily to numb toothache. Her voice was barely louder than the sound of the river behind them. "You wanted my body." She raised the blade. "You will crawl from now on." He tried to back away, but his legs gave out even before she touched him. She did not smile this time. She did not blink. With a single motion, swift, mercifully clean, she cut the tendon and let him fall. The night held its breath. 6 men writhed in the dirt, unable to stand, unable to run, their cries echoing against the cabins. Liza wiped the blade on Trask's shirt and tucked it back beneath her skirt. She stepped away from them, her shadow long against the moonlit ground. A few cabin doors cracked open again. Wide eyes peered out. One whispered, "Liza, what have you done?" She looked back at the 6 broken men. "Bought myself a future," she said, "and bought all of you tonight, because she knew one truth: fear was louder than chains." For 2 days after the baptism feast, the plantation carried an uneasy silence, one that stretched across the fields, the quarters, the kitchen house, even into the grand hall where portraits of long-dead masters hung with their painted eyes full of suspicion. Every survivor who had attended the feast moved as though walking through thick smoke, blinking hard, rubbing temples, clutching stomachs. The sickness had not left them. It grew. Whispers turned into theories. "Bad meat," some muttered. "A curse," others said quietly. "A sign," the oldest enslaved woman murmured, "that the earth about tired of swallowing our pain." But there were also eyes sharp, suspicious eyes watching the prison shed where the slave girl had been locked away. The overseer swore he had seen her smile as they dragged her across the dirt. The mistress had fainted before the dessert tray came out and woke with her first thoughts soaked in hatred. She did this. She must have. So they strengthened the locks. They placed 2 guards outside. They even stuffed rags into the cracks around the windows, as if her very breath was poisonous. Inside the cell, the girl sat silently, not in fear, but in exhaustion. Her body was weak from childbirth, but her mind was sharper than ever. The sickness sweeping through the plantation was slow, creeping. She never wanted it to kill instantly. No instant death would bring quick blame. Slow death brought suspicion, paranoia, infighting. It kept them too busy wondering about causes to ever consider consequences. The poison in the baptism cake was mild, just the first string pulled loose on a long tapestry she had been weaving for months. She had more threads waiting. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, the wooden floor beneath her feet gave a soft groan. A moment later, a whisper filtered up through the cracks. "Girl?" It was the voice of Samuel, the hunchback stable boy, who moved through shadows like they were made for him. "You still breathin'?" "Yes," she whispered. "Good." A scrape. Wood shifting. Then a small corner of the floorboard lifted, just enough for his one bright eye to appear. "They watchin' you like a fox watches a chicken coop. But they don't know about this hole." The hidden crawl space under the shed had been forgotten by everyone except Samuel. He was born on this land, grew up crawling through its guts, learned every secret tunnel, every loose stone, every place an overseer's whip couldn't reach. "They think I did it," she murmured. Samuel snorted. "Course they do. You, the only one, ain't sick. I didn't mean for you to get caught up in this." "You ain't get me caught up in nothing," he said firmly. "World caught us both a long time ago. I just ain't letting it keep us." He pushed a cloth pouch through the floor crack. It smelled of herbs, medicine, real medicine, not poison. "For your strength," he said. "Babies too, when you get her back." A tremor passed through her. "They took her." "I know. Mistress said she keep the baby in the house till you confess to, whatever they imaginin'." Her hands balled into fists. "Confession won't save me." "No," Samuel agreed. "But what we plannin' just might." He explained the rest in hushed tones. Who was sickest, who was recovering, who was collapsing, how the overseer was bedridden, and how the master had not left his room for 2 days, how panic was spreading like wildfire, how the field hands were whispering about rebellion for the first time in years. "You ain't just shook the table," Samuel said. "You flipped it." She pressed her forehead to the floor. "What about the guards outside?" He gave a crooked grin. "They sick too, trying to pretend they ain't. Every time one coughs, the other jumps like he heard a gunshot." Her pulse quickened. "Then tonight." "No," Samuel cut in. "Not yet. You still too weak. And they still got the baby. We run now. We run empty-handed." She swallowed. So, what do we do? Samuel leaned closer until his voice was barely breath. We let them destroy themselves a little more. Her heart thudded. And then, he whispered, we take everything back. He let the board fall gently into place and disappeared beneath the shed. She sat in the dim light, her breathing slow, steady, controlled. Outside, a guard doubled over coughing. Inside the house, a mistress shouted for laudanum she didn't have. In the quarters, people whispered of omens. And in the shed, the girl who had poisoned the plantation closed her eyes and said the last words of the day softly. They wanted to own my life. Now they'll choke on the price. The mistress had always been a woman who demanded order, her hair smoothed, her dresses ironed, her servants silent, her meals predictable. She liked her world polished and obedient, like silver she kept hidden in velvet-lined drawers. But on the third day after the baptism, her world began to rot faster than she could control. Her fever rose with the sunset. She screamed for the doctor, but no doctor wanted to come. Everyone in town had heard rumors of the plague at the Thompson plantation. The name alone made horses turn away, church doors lock, and windows slam shut. So the mistress paced her bedroom like a trapped hawk, clutching her lace handkerchief, staining it with bile. The master's bedroom door had been shut for hours. She heard him groaning on the other side. The housemaids were too sick to stand. Even the butler, her most loyal servant, had collapsed in the hallway like a dropped needle. Everywhere she looked, she saw death. Everywhere but one place. She did this, the mistress hissed. That slave girl. She planned it. She cursed us. Her eyes drifted toward a small cradle placed in the far corner of her room, the newborn inside, sleeping quietly. Unaware that she was being held hostage by a woman unraveling faster than her own sanity. The baby cooed softly. The mistress stiffened. Oh no, little one, you don't fool me. She approached the cradle, her fevered mind twisting harmless noises into sinister omens. You are her weapon, her legacy. She poisoned us, and she thinks she can leave her spawn behind to infect the house. Her throat rattled with a cough. But I won't let her. She reached into the cradle and froze. The child's eyes opened, soft, brown, unafraid. The mistress's hand trembled. Something in that gaze struck her, not with fear but with a sharp pang of memory. Her own daughter, lost 2 winters ago, had eyes just like that. Stop it, she snapped at herself, pulling back. You're sick, you're delirious. But the resemblance had shaken her more deeply than the fever ever could. She sank beside the cradle and burst into tears. Downstairs, the house was falling apart. Servants tripped over each other, vomiting on the stairs. Someone fainted in the parlor. The cook, too weak to move, had dragged herself halfway out of the kitchen before collapsing. And in the shed, the enslaved girl, mother of the child upstairs, was counting the hours. In the crawl space beneath the shed, Samuel returned under the floorboards just after twilight. She heard him before she saw him. The soft scuff of knees, the breathless whisper. You awake? Yes. She pushed the loose board aside. What news? Ain't no order left, Samuel murmured. Mistress barely standin'. Master worse. The overseer got so dizzy he fell off his own horse. And the guards? He laughed softly. They ain't guardin' nothin'. One passed out right outside your door. Nearly fell on it. Her pulse quickened. So it's time? Almost, Samuel said. But there's something else. His voice deepened. They plannin' to make you confess tomorrow. She froze. How? Same way they make anybody confess. His eyes hardened. Rope. Fire. Whip. They too sick to do it proper. But desperate folk do stupid things. Her hand bit into the floorboard. My baby. She's still in the big house? Samuel nodded. A spike of fear and fury shot through her. Then we can't wait. Girl, you can barely stand. I'll crawl to her if I have to. Samuel didn't answer at first. Then, I found a way in. She looked at him sharply. The cellar door, he whispered. Hinges rusted, but I can pry it open after sundown. I can get you inside. But once you in, you on your own. She didn't even hesitate. I'm ready. You sure? Samuel, she said quietly. They already took everything from me. The only thing left is the thing they're keeping from me. His jaw tightened. He nodded once. The house. After midnight. Fog hung low over the plantation yard like a shroud. The guards were unconscious. The windows glowed dimly from the sickbeds within. Samuel moved like a phantom, lifting the cellar door with a soft groan of rusted hinges. "Go," he whispered. She slipped inside, her body trembling not from fear but from weakness and rage. The cellar smelled of mold and spilled wine. She pressed a hand to the wall, steadying herself, then began climbing the stairs toward the kitchen. Every step felt like climbing out of a grave. The kitchen was empty, pots overturned, herbs scattered, blood on the floor from someone who had fallen earlier. She moved through the dining room, past the long oak table where they had held her baby during the baptism. Her stomach twisted. She kept going, up the stairs, down the hallway, to the mistress's bedroom door. The door creaked open. Inside, the mistress lay slumped beside the cradle, clutching the edge with white knuckles, her eyes half open in fever. The baby slept peacefully. The girl stepped inside. The mistress stirred, blinking as if the shadows had taken shape. "You," she croaked. How did you?" The girl's voice was calm, cold, and steady as winter. "I came for my child." The mistress tried to rise but collapsed back onto the floor, trembling. No, you can't. She's mine until you confess she's... The girl stepped closer, her shadow falling over the cradle. "No," she said softly. "She was never yours." The mistress's breathing hitched, her fevered eyes flickering with a mixture of terror and something almost like guilt. And that was the moment, the exact moment, when the plantation's fate shifted from poisoning to war. The mistress tried to crawl backward, but her limbs moved like soggy cloth. She gripped the floorboards, panting, her tangled hair matted to her temples with sweat. "You don't understand," she wheezed. She can't be with you. Not now. Not like this." The girl ignored her, stepping past her trembling body toward the cradle. She felt like she was walking through water. Every muscle ached. Her vision swam, but nothing could stop the pull in her chest, the ache of motherhood dragging her forward. She leaned over the cradle. Her daughter's tiny chest rose and fell in soft, steady breaths. Her hands were curled into little fists, her mouth slightly open, making a small, sleeping murmur, a sound so pure it hurt. The girl's throat tightened. "My baby," she whispered. The mistress let out a harsh, broken laugh. "Yours? She's a piece of evidence. Until we know what you did. Until you confess." The girl turned slowly. "I don't confess to crimes they committed against themselves." "You poisoned us!" the mistress shrieked, her voice cracking like dried wood. "You poisoned this house. You killed." She choked mid-sentence, coughing violently until she spat blood onto her own nightgown. The girl watched, her face flat as riverstone. "I didn't poison anyone. You did that yourselves." The mistress froze. What do you mean?" "You used me. You stole my child. You worked me until my bones felt like dust. You let men touch me because your husband wanted entertainment." Her voice sharpened. "You wanted cruelty. You wanted obedience. You wanted everything except consequences." She stepped closer to the mistress, who scrambled back until her spine hit the bed frame. "What's happening to you?" the girl whispered. "It's justice, and justice spreads." The mistress shook her head frantically. No, this is witchcraft. It must be. Something you cursed." "I never touched a curse," the girl said. "You fed your entire house sickness by your own hands." "What are you saying?" "The baptism water," the girl murmured. "You didn't boil it. You didn't purify it. You used the stagnant basin from the old well. The same one that was sealed during the fever 2 summers ago." The mistress's face drained of color. "No," she whispered. No. That basin was safe, my husband said. He said it because he didn't want to carry new water, because he didn't want to walk in the heat, because he didn't want to be bothered." The girl's voice sharpened. Because the lives of slaves weren't worth clean water to him. The mistress's eyes widened with horror. "You got sick," the girl said softly, "because you chose convenience over care. You got sick because of your own laziness, your own pride, your own cruelty." No. the mistress whispered, shaking. You poisoned your own household. The mistress opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came. Only a ragged wheeze escaped. The girl turned back to her child and lifted her gently from the cradle. The baby stirred, blinking up at her mother with soft confusion. The girl kissed her tiny forehead, tears slipping down her face. Then, a floorboard creaked. She stiffened, footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging, coming up the hallway. The mistress's eyes went wide with fresh fear. He's coming, she gasped. My husband, he doesn't know you're here. He's delirious, he's angry, The girl stepped behind the wardrobe, clutching her child tightly to her chest. She pressed her back to the wall, heart racing. A shadow passed under the door. Then the doorknob turned. The master stumbled inside, leaning against the doorframe. His skin was pale and slick, his shirt stained with sweat and vomit. His eyes were sunken but burning with a feverish fury. Where? He rasped. Is she? The mistress struggled to sit up. My love, she. He kicked her aside. She cried out as her body hit the floor. He staggered deeper into the room. She's here, he whispered. I heard voices. The girl held her breath behind the wardrobe. Her child began to whimper softly. She pressed one trembling finger to the baby's lips. Please, please. The master's head jerked toward the sound. What was that? The mistress forced a laugh, delirious and desperate. Nothing. Just the wind. My love. Just. He grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head into the floor. She screamed. Don't lie to me, he hissed. She's here. The witch. The one who murdered this house. The baby whimpered louder. His eyes snapped to the wardrobe. The girl closed her eyes. Samuel, she prayed silently. If you're near, if you're watching, please, help me. The master reached for the wardrobe handle, fingers brushing the wood, when a loud crash echoed downstairs. A man's voice shouted, then a gunshot. The master spun toward the door, swaying. What the hell? The girl seized the moment. She darted out from behind the wardrobe, baby in arms, sprinting for the opposite corner of the room. The master turned too slowly. Fever had made him sluggish, blind with rage. You! He roared. She didn't wait. She bolted, out the door, down the hall, down the stairs, 3 at a time. Behind her, she heard the master stumbling after her, his breath wet and ragged. Another gunshot erupted downstairs. A third voice yelled, Samuel. Samuel was fighting for her baby, for all of them. She ran harder even as her knees buckled, even as her vision blurred because there was no future unless she got out of that house alive. Behind her, the master screamed her name, and when she hit the parlor floor, she realized this was no longer a poisoning. This was a full uprising, and the house that had always owned her was about to burn. The parlor was chaos, furniture overturned, curtains ripped from their hooks, shattered glass glittering like ice across the floor. Smoke drifted from the kitchen, thin but growing. Something had already caught fire, and in the center of it all, Samuel stood with a shotgun. His shirt was torn, his lip bleeding, his breath heaving like a man who had run too many miles in too little time. Across from him, 2 overseers lay groaning on the floor, one clutching a shattered knee, the other unconscious with blood pooling beneath his skull. Samuel lifted his head the instant she appeared at the foot of the stairs. His eyes widened. Liza. She clutched her baby tighter against her chest. I got her, she gasped. We have to go. Samuel nodded, but too slowly. His eyes flicked behind her, and before she could turn, the master's roar shook the walls. You! She spun just in time to see him hurl himself down the staircase, half collapsing halfway, then forcing himself upright with pure rage. Fever slicked his skin. His pupils looked wrong, like black beads floating in yellowed water. Give me that child, he shrieked. Liza backed away, trembling. Samuel raised the shotgun. The master didn't even flinch. You think you can stop me, boy? I own you. Samuel's jaw clenched. Not tonight. The master lunged. Samuel fired. The blast split the air. Fabric tore. Blood sprayed the banister. The master stumbled, but he didn't fall. Not all the way. Not yet. He only dropped to one knee, gripping the railing as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. You shot me, he whispered, disbelief flooding his voice. and then fury replaced it. He pushed himself back up. His breath rattled. His legs shook, but murder burned in his eyes. Samuel stepped in front of Liza, cocking the gun again. "No," the master rasped. "No more bullets. No more defiance. You can't kill me. I raised you, fed you. You fed me scraps," Samuel growled, "and raised me like a mule." The master swayed, then smirked, his teeth coated in blood. "She ain't worth dying for," he spat, pointing at Liza. "She's a breeder, a piece of stock. You're a fool for risking." Samuel swung the gun like a club. The wooden butt cracked against the master's face, sending him crashing into the wall. Liza gasped. Samuel nearly fell with him. The feverish master was heavy, his body stiff as fired iron, but he pushed back, keeping Liza shielded. The master slid to the floor, but he didn't stay there. He laughed. It was wet and bubbling, like something drowning in its own lungs. "You poisoned us," he croaked, staring at Liza with animal hatred. "You brought death to my house. My wife is dying because of you." Liza stepped out from behind Samuel. "No," she said softly. "She's dying because of what you did." He stared at her, confused, swaying. "You let her use the bad water," Liza said. "The basin from the old well, the one sealed during fever season." The master's face went blank. Then slowly, his expression crumpled. That can't be. No. You killed your own house," she whispered. His mouth twitched, his chest heaved, his fingers clawed at the floor. "You lie," he growled. "You lie." His body spasmed. Then he lunged again. Samuel tried to lift the gun, but the master caught the barrel and wrenched it sideways. The weapon clattered across the parlor floor. Samuel threw a punch. The master slammed him into a table. Glass shattered. Samuel crumpled with a groan. Liza screamed. The baby wailed. The master turned toward them, eyes wild, chest heaving. "Give me that child." She backed away, heart slamming, legs trembling, but she didn't run. She couldn't, not with the baby in her arms, not with Samuel stunned, not with her own body collapsing from fever, exhaustion, and fear. She had one choice, only one. She positioned herself between the master and the child, even if it meant dying. The master stepped closer, staggering but determined. His hands reached out, his breath rattled, foul and fevered. "You're mine," he rasped. "You always were." A spark snapped from the kitchen. Then another. Then a loud whoosh. Flames erupted into the hallway, roaring up the wall and devouring the wallpaper. Smoke thickened instantly, choking the room, curling around the ceilings like black snakes. The master turned, startled and stumbling. Samuel lifted his head, coughing violently as he crawled across broken glass toward the gun. "Liza, run," he croaked. The master lunged again, not for Samuel, not for escape, but straight for Liza. She darted backward, tripping over a fallen table leg. She hit the floor hard, curling her body around her baby. The master loomed above her, raising one trembling fist. Click. He froze. Samuel stood a few feet away, shotgun aimed at the master's throat. The master turned, slow and stunned. "You think you're free?" he whispered. Samuel's hands didn't shake. "Tonight I am." The master opened his mouth. Samuel pulled the trigger. The blast lit the room with fire and thunder. The master flew backward, crashing into a bookshelf. Books tumbled over his limp body. His head slumped. His chest stopped moving. Liza stared at the corpse, shaking, not with fear, not even with relief, with disbelief that it was over. The fire cracked behind them, climbing fast. Samuel staggered to Lila's side. "Can you walk?" She nodded, holding her baby closer. "Yes, but we have to go, now." He helped her up. Together they ran, through smoke, through heat, through collapsing walls and falling beams. Behind them, the house roared as flames swallowed its foundation. By the time they reached the yard, the entire manor was an inferno. Liza stood panting, sweat and tears streaking her face. Her baby whimpered, burying her face in her mother's chest. Samuel placed a hand on her back. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The house that had owned them was dying, and for the first time in their lives, they had a future, The fire behind them raged so hot it painted the sky orange. Sparks drifted up like fireflies, carried by the wind toward the cane fields and the woods. The manor groaned as beams snapped, one after another, until a section of the roof caved inward with a monstrous howl. Samuel didn't look back, not even once. He kept his arm around Liza, steadying her as they hurried toward the tree line. Her legs shook with exhaustion. Fever still simmered under her skin, but the night air cooled her enough to keep her upright. The baby cried softly against her chest, sensing the tension in every breath her mother took. They reached the first thicket of trees, dark, tangled, humid, and Samuel finally allowed them to stop beneath an old cypress. Liza leaned against the trunk, gasping for air. We really made it out." Samuel bent down, hands on his knees, chest heaving. "We're not safe yet. The overseers might still be alive. They'll come after us with dogs." She swallowed hard. "Not in the fire." "No," he said, "but others might." He scanned the darkness between the trees, the flicker of shadows, the rustle of leaves. His jaw stayed tight, but she recognized something new in his eyes. Hope, fragile, trembling hope. Liza slid down the tree until she was sitting on the cool earth. Her baby nuzzled her neck, settling for the first time since they fled. She ran a hand over her daughter's tiny back, tears warming her cheeks. "She almost died in there," Liza whispered. "If that table leg had been an inch higher, if the smoke had been faster." Samuel knelt in front of her. "She's alive. You kept her alive." "I didn't," Liza said softly. She lifted her eyes to Samuel's. "You did." He shook his head. "We did it together." The forest hummed around them, crickets, night birds, the distant crackle of flames. Liza felt her heartbeat finally slowing, though her body trembled with adrenaline and shock. "How far do you think we can get?" she asked. "Far enough," Samuel said. "There's a safe house about 5 miles north. A woman takes in runaways, helps them follow the river to the next town." Liza blinked. "You knew about this?" Samuel hesitated, then nodded. "I was saving it for the right time." "The right time?" she repeated. "Samuel, none of us were ever going to get a right time." He looked down at the dirt, rubbing soot from his hands. "You're right," he murmured. "I kept waiting for a miracle." "And tonight?" she asked. "What do you call this?" His gaze lifted. "A miracle born of fire." She almost smiled, but the weight of what they'd done pressed heavy on her chest. Freer, yes, but also marked. The world outside was no kinder to their bodies than the plantation had been. "Samuel," she whispered, "we killed the master." Samuel's face didn't flinch. He died hunting what he thought he owned. "And the mistress?" Liza's voice cracked. "She might not make it through the night," he said softly. "We didn't kill her either. His neglect did." Liza closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her temples. "I don't know if God will forgive us," she whispered. Samuel reached out and took her hand gently, as if she were made of thin glass. "God saw everything," he said. "Every cruelty, every hunger, every hurt, and still kept us alive until we could run." Liza opened her eyes. "Maybe," she breathed. "But running doesn't mean they won't follow." Samuel straightened. "Let them. We'll be gone before dawn." He offered his hand. "Come, we need to move." With effort, Liza pushed herself up. The fever made her body hot and heavy, but she forced her legs to obey. She adjusted her baby in her arms, tucking the blanket tighter around her. They walked deeper into the woods, branches brushing their clothes, leaves damp beneath their feet. Every sound made Liza flinch: the hoot of an owl, a squirrel scurrying in the brush, the snap of a twig. Samuel always moved toward the sound. She always clung tighter to the baby. After nearly half an hour of walking, the firelight had faded entirely behind them. The forest grew darker, the trees older and thicker. A fog settled between the trunks, thin and cold. Liza shivered. "Samuel, just fog," he murmured. "River's close." She let out a shaky breath. "Good. I'm scared of shadows tonight." His voice softened. "Shadows aren't dangerous." "Some are," she insisted. "Some carry whips." Samuel slowed, turning toward her. "Not anymore." She met his eyes in the darkness. How can you be so sure? Because, he said, stepping closer, I will never let anyone touch you again. Her breath caught, and for a moment, for the first time in her entire life, Liza felt protected instead of trapped. But the feeling shattered when a distant shout echoed from the direction of the burning plantation. Samuel whipped around. Dogs, he hissed. Her blood turned to ice. No, they can't. They're far, Samuel said quickly, grabbing her hand. But we have to move now. They ran not fast, because Liza carried the baby, but steady. Samuel cut through brush with his forearms, clearing a path. The shouts grew louder, the dogs' barks sharper. Lights flickered between the trees. Torches. There, Samuel pointed ahead. I see the river. Liza followed his gaze and gasped. Water glistened between the trees, dark, wide, and merciful. A small fishing boat was tied near the bank. Someone left that for us, Samuel whispered. Who? Liza asked breathlessly. He shook his head. Maybe God, maybe chance. Maybe someone who knew we'd need it. They stumbled down the embankment. Samuel jumped in first, steadying the boat. Give me the baby. Liza hesitated only a second before placing her daughter in his arms. He held the child like she was sacred carefully, securely before passing her to a nest of blankets inside the boat. Liza climbed in next. The moment she sat, torches appeared through the trees behind them. Samuel pushed off. The current pulled them instantly. Shouts erupted on the bank. Men pointed. Dogs strained at their leashes. But the water carried Samuel and Liza faster than any man could swim. The baby whimpered. Liza pulled her close, rocking her gently. Samuel paddled, strong and silent, staring ahead into the endless dark. After a long time too long, Liza whispered, Samuel? Yes? What are we now? He didn't answer immediately. Then, alive, he said, and for the first time all night, Liza believed him. Dawn crept over the marshlands in slow streaks of pale rose and bruised purple, the kind of sky that looked wounded just by existing. The fog was still heavy, curling around the trees like cautious fingers. Zuri moved through it with the quiet precision of someone who had learned long ago that silence was survival. Her bare feet barely disturbed the wet earth. Her breath did not cloud the air. Behind her, the patrol wagon groaned under the weight of its riders, 4 overseers, armed and tired, believing themselves hunters. They had no idea how wrong they were. Zuri paused at the edge of a narrow causeway. A decayed bridge stretched ahead, its planks soft with rot, its ropes frayed from storms. She touched one board with her toe. It sagged dangerously. Perfect. She slipped down the embankment, fingers digging into the mud, and crouched beneath the bridge. In the dim hollow, the scent of moss and salt water wrapped around her. She withdrew a shard of metal she'd scavenged days earlier. The blade was crude, jagged, but lethal in the right hands. Her hands. Every tendon she'd ever cut, every ambush she'd ever planned, had been forced upon her by desperation. But this was strategy. This was reclamation. Above her, the creak of wagon wheels grew louder. Zuri sliced halfway through 3 key support ropes, just enough to keep the bridge intact until pressure tested it. Then she dragged herself out from beneath, shaking dirt from her arms, and slipped into the reeds. The first horse stepped onto the bridge. A long, low groan trembled across the wood. Then another step, another groan. One of the overseers shouted, "Hold! Something's..." The bridge gave way. The horses shrieked as they plunged downward. Men hit the water with a force that knocked the breath from their lungs. 2 disappeared beneath the surface instantly. The wagon tumbled sideways, crushing one rider beneath its wheel. Zuri did not move. Not yet. She watched as the last man, broad-shouldered, scarred, angrier than he was, intelligent, surfaced, sputtering, clawing at the reeds. He dragged himself toward land, coughing violently. Now she stepped forward. His eyes widened the moment he saw her. "You!" he hissed, voice shredded with hate and fear. Zuri lifted the metal shard, reflecting the rising sun like a sliver of fire. "Me." He tried to scramble backward, but the mud sucked at his legs. She crouched beside him, expression unreadable. "Y'all shouldn't have come after me," she said softly. "Didn't nobody teach you to leave dangerous things alone?" He swung wildly, she dodged with ease. The blow cost him balance. He collapsed halfway into the marsh again. Zuri grabbed his wrist, twisting until tendons strained. His scream tore across the quiet morning. "You hunted me like an animal," she whispered, leaning in close. "But I know how animals survive. Do you?" With one swift movement, she drew the shard across the back of his ankle, clean, practiced, efficient. His leg buckled. He collapsed. She didn't wait for more screams. She turned and ran, disappearing into the maze of cypress and fog. The marsh swallowed his cries. By the time the rising sun burned away the mist, Zuri had already crossed miles. Her breath steadied, her pace slowed. And as she reached the edge of a small, free settlement hidden deep within the forest, a figure stepped forward. Tall, calm, and familiar. Amara. Zuri hadn't seen her in months, not since she had fled the plantation. But Amara's eyes softened in that rare way that meant safety. "You're hurt," Amara said. Zuri shook her head. "Not mine." Amara studied her. "You ready to stop running?" Zuri's answer came slow, heavy with the weight of choices she had not yet made. "I don't know." Amara stepped aside and opened the path into the hidden camp. "Then stay here until you do." For the first time in what felt like years, Zuri stepped into a place where no chains hung, no whips cracked, no men claimed ownership over her body. But safety was not peace, and peace was not freedom. And Zuri knew deep in the marrow of her bones that the men she had not killed would send more hunters, stronger ones, crueler ones. She looked back toward the forest, toward the marsh, toward the world that refused to forget her. Then she whispered to herself, "Let them come." She was ready. Night in the settlement was different from anywhere Zuri had ever lived. Quiet but not fearful, dark but not threatening. The trees did not loom like prison bars. They stood like guardians. Fires burned low, never high, as if the inhabitants knew how to warm themselves without drawing attention. Zuri lay on a woven mat inside Amara's shelter, listening to the symphony of insects and wind. For the first time in months, her muscles weren't tight with the urgency of escape. But rest did not come easily. Freedom, she was learning, had its own edges. She heard soft footsteps outside. A moment later, Amara pushed aside the hide curtain. The older woman carried 2 bowls of steaming broth and a stare sharp enough to cut through the dark. "You haven't eaten since yesterday," Amara said, setting a bowl beside her. Zuri sat up slowly. "My stomach ain't asking for food. Your body is," Amara replied, sitting cross-legged across from her. "You've pushed it too long." Zuri picked up the bowl and sipped. The broth was simple but warm, and warmth felt like a forgotten language. Amara watched her with the patient intensity of someone who had survived too much to take anything at face value. "The patrols will assume you drowned with the others." "No," Zuri said, shaking her head. "They know better. And why's that?" "Because I've survived every other trap they put me in. They think I'm some kind of devil woman." Amara snorted. "Good. Fear is a weapon too." Zuri looked down at her hands. "They'll come again. And next time, they'll come meaner." Amara set her bowl aside. "Then you have a choice to make. You can disappear. Live here, safe, hidden. Become part of this settlement." Zuri met her gaze. Or you can do what you've been doing, fight, cut, run, hurt them before they hurt you." Silence swelled between them, heavy and thick. Zuri finally spoke. "You think I like hurting people? I think you like surviving," Amara answered. "There's a difference." End quote. Zuri didn't respond. She didn't need to. Later that night, the settlement gathered around a low fire. Faces glowed amber in the dark. Men, women, elders, children who had only ever known the forest as home. No one stared at Zuri with fear or suspicion. They looked at her like she was one of them. Elder Nyala stepped forward, leaning heavily on her carved staff. "We welcome the one who ran through fire and mud, who cut the hands that came to bind her. You carry a spirit that will not bow." Zuri stiffened. Praise was more unsettling than threats. Nyala continued. "But no spirit, no matter how strong, can fight alone forever." A murmur echoed through the crowd. Zuri's heartbeat quickened. I ain't asking nobody to fight for me. We know, Nyala said gently. But you should ask yourself if you still fight only for yourself, or for something larger. Zuri opened her mouth and stopped. She didn't know the answer. Hours later, she wandered to the edge of the settlement. The moon hung low, spreading silver across the marsh. Crickets rasped in long, slow waves. The air smelled of wet earth and night flowers. She sat on a fallen log and stared at the distant orange glow on the horizon, the light of Charleston. A world she had escaped, yes, but one that still reached out claws toward her. It ain't done with me, she whispered, and I ain't done with it. A rustle of leaves behind her broke her thoughts. She spun, blade drawn before the figure even stepped into the moonlight. It was a boy no older than 15, thin but standing straight. Kayin, she said, lowering the shard. You follow me for a reason? He nodded. The elders think you might lead us. Lead you where? Into the world, he said quietly. We hide out here, but hiding ain't living. Zuri felt something shift in her chest, unexpected, unwelcome. I ain't no leader, boy. Kayin stepped closer. Maybe you ain't trying to be one, but people follow storms too. She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she turned back toward the horizon. You don't know what you're asking. Men died today because of me. We already die, Kayin said simply. Every time they catch one of us. Every time they burn a home. Every time they take someone's child. At least with you. He hesitated. We'd die fighting. The boy's words cut deeper than any slave catcher's knife. Zuri didn't respond. She couldn't. Kayin bowed his head and vanished back into the woods, leaving her alone with the moon and her thoughts. When Zuri finally returned to Amara's shelter, the older woman was awake, sharpening a bone knife. You thinking? Amara asked without looking up. Zuri exhaled long and slow. Yeah. And? Zuri met her eyes. I ain't leaving. Not yet. Amara nodded, unsurprised. Then the settlement will stand with you. Zuri swallowed. I ain't sure if that's good for y'all or bad. That's our choice, Amara said. Now you need to make yours. Zuri stepped outside again, staring into the deep, endless dark of the forest. For the first time in her life, the path ahead wasn't just about running, or surviving, or cutting tendons and escaping chains. It was about deciding what her freedom was worth, and who else she was willing to free along the way. There, under the moonlit sky, Zuri made a silent vow. She would not bow, not to the men who hunted her, not to fear, not even to the past trying to pull her back. If they wanted her, they would have to come into the forest to take her, and the forest would take them first. Tomorrow, she would prepare. Tomorrow, she would choose a path. Tonight, she let the darkness settle around her like armor. Because Zuri was no longer just the most dangerous woman in South Carolina, she was becoming something far more terrifying. A leader, a storm, a reckoning waiting to break.